The Alpha Sessions.
Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Alpha Sessions. In the studio today I have Kitty Montague.
Hello, thank you guys so much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming in. You performed 3 amazing songs for us today. And I want to dive right in to where you started making music, because your music is beautiful and you've released quite a lot since last year, 2020 was your first release, right? But where did your musical journey begin?
My musical journey began, I trained in musical theatre, but I was always songwriting throughout that. So after that, I took the plunge into doing less musical theatre, more gigs, more songwriting. But it wasn't really until the last sort of 3 or 4 years that I went full-time with music. Maybe a bit longer, I'm not including lockdown. But so that I've gone full-time with it, and that I'm constantly gigging, writing, and in and out the studio.
Amazing. But musical theatre, you would state as like your beginning in music anyway. Do you think that still informs what you do in music, or have you kind of left that world behind?
I think I've pretty much left it behind. I love musicals, I still love the theatre, and sometimes I go and I'm like, oh, if only I'd like stuck at it. But I much more prefer this music world, and I prefer having the freedom of my own writing and being able to experiment and change genres, and also have a little bit more emotion and soul that's more raw. I can be myself rather than a character, and I think that's quite important for me because it's where I write all my music from. It's very raw. It's all from experiences and stories that I want to tell, or opinions that I have. So yeah, I can be more myself.
Yeah, that is interesting. But we were talking about that earlier. How it's great to have a musical theatre background. It's because it's something really different, and I think it would definitely inform the way you see music. But you were talking about freedom being something that you didn't experience. It was more competitive.
Yes, definitely more competitive, and it's more. I think it was great. You obviously have to have a big technique base for your voice, which is obviously so important. But yeah, I think having the freedom to be a bit more creative rather than being sort of directed to and being told to, follow a script. I think in some ways it's easier with musical theatre because I suppose you're not as vulnerable because you do get to act out a character. But yeah, I definitely like that I can be more myself and tell more of my own stories. I think I connect to people better that way. And do you think that's where your songwriting came from, because you needed to express that vulnerable side, and so for so long you were being other people, being characters, and then when you started writing you realised that you had a lot to talk about? Is it always personal for you? Yeah, it's definitely always personal. I've always had a lot to say, and I think that it's sort of narrowed down now. I've sort of found my message, that I kind of what I want to get through my music. But I definitely have a lot to say, and definitely got a lot of opinions that I think I needed to get out. And I also think everyone says that songwriting is such a form of therapy, which I do agree with. I also sometimes think that it can be very difficult because you're reliving those experiences that you sometimes would like to just put behind you, but you've got to get a good song out of it, got to make it worthwhile.
It's always worth it, and relating to people is exactly, it's a really good feeling. So the solo side of things, you usually perform solo, I imagine, but I think I also saw you in a choir. And I was really interested in this because I want to see where that began, but also you've done some major events. Right?
Done some cool things. So I do all of my artist stuff, I do all of my songwriting, but I also do a lot of session work, so a lot of function gigs, a lot of backing vocals, a lot of choir work, which is great because it means that my full-time job is music and I'm fully immersed in it. So yeah, I've done some great choir stuff with a choir called Some Voices Choir, where we did the Jack Whitehall Christmas with My Father, which is a Netflix special. So we were in the choir in that. And yeah, done some fun adverts with them. Yeah, so it's great. And it's also, you're just meeting really fun people all the time. And every day's different.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say the
good.
variation. The variation sounds really great. But how long have you been in that? Is that a long running thing?
Yes, so I have kind of been doing various bits of work with them for, again, like the last couple of years, maybe a year or so before lockdown. Yeah.
And how was lockdown? I mean, we always talk about lockdown in interviews now. I mean, everybody...
So relevant, though.
It is relevant.
It took up such a long time.
It did. Even it feels like years ago now, to be honest. But I definitely want to ask you what you've been up to in lockdown. But in terms of the choir, how did things work with them? Because you can't have been working very much.
I didn't do too much stuff with the choir. I did a few adverts and a few recording jobs, which was great. Especially being able to do it from home.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I'm going to say it. I did an advert for Vicks US.
Oh, really?
Yes. So that was fun. They've got a, I don't know, it's a US TV advert, so you might be able to find it on YouTube. But if you ever hear the Honey Lemon Vicks advert, that's my voice on it.
Claim to fame,
yeah. And yeah, so I did a few bits of recording. That might be a secret, I'm not sure. Don't go shouting about that, guys.
Keep that between us.
It was time for me to do a lot of writing and a lot of my own recording and releasing tracks out. So that's mainly what I did throughout the lockdown. A lot of Zooms, a lot of live streams. So it's nice to be in your presence.
Yeah, same for me, to be honest, to be on this side of things. So you did a lot of writing then. It was more like an isolated focus time, which it was for quite a lot of people, but you managed to do gigs as well.
Yes,
which is amazing that you can balance everything. I was like a hermit. I went in and just like wrote loads of songs. But your first ever release, was that in the lockdown? Did you write that in the lockdown, or was that before?
I wrote it in the lockdown. Another little secret, it wasn't my first release. I'd previously released stuff before, which I then took down because when I started releasing stuff, I didn't necessarily know what direction I wanted to go in and what maybe what style or how I wanted to release things. So I took everything down and I started again. And my first song I released with my fresh start was Yellow Lines, which I wrote at the beginning of the pandemic, and we released it as a charity single. So we took proceeds for Refuge, which is obviously a really important charity supporting women and children who have been affected by domestic violence. And the song was something I wrote at the beginning of lockdown, which related to the pandemic. I wrote it with my dad in mind, who's someone that works incredibly hard for other people but doesn't always stop to put himself first and kind of think about his own health and well-being. And I think so many people related to that because we saw our friends and family working as key workers, putting themselves in danger effectively to help other people. And so that's kind of where the song came from, that feeling of like, oh, I would do anything to like protect you, but you're almost on the other side of that and you're doing the same thing for other people. But I'm like, it's, you know, the people who love you are most sort of worried for you. Yeah. I don't know if that made sense at all, but yeah, that's where it came from.
If it would save your life, I'd paint this house in yellow lines, stand behind and let each day pass by. close the door and lock it twice, I'd learn these walls get lost inside. I'd give up the light and soak in the night. But you have a heart for somebody else. You have a heart that won't stop for yourself. Do you look down when you place your step? I'm scared you're walking too close to the edge. Would you slow down to catch your breath? Do it for me, if not for yourself. Do you look down when you place your step? I'm scared you're walking too close to the edge. Would you slow down to catch your breath? Do it for me, if not for yourself. If it would save your life, I'd write and post my last invite. I'd welcome it lovely, take it by the hand, I'd let it get to know me. I'd settle my fears, trade all these tears, no terms and exceptions. I'd sell them for years to add to your collection. But you have a heart for somebody else. You have a heart that won't stop for yourself. Do you look down when you place your step? I'm scared you're walking too close to the edge. Would you slow down to catch your breath? Do it for me, if not for yourself. Do you look down when you place your step? I'm scared you're walking too close to the edge. Would you slow down to catch your breath? Do it for me, if not for yourself. It's hurting me watching you. Would you stop and review? Overtime, overdrive, running off of no fuel. Would you stand at the front of the queue? Would you put yourself first if it wasn't for you? Do you look down when you place your step? I'm scared you're walking too close to the edge. Would you slow down to catch your breath? Do it for me, if not for yourself. Do you look down when you place your step? I'm scared you're walking too close to the edge. Would you slow down to catch your breath? Do it for me, if not for yourself.
The Alpha Sessions.
This one's sort of like a piano ballad.
Yes.
Thing. But I'm interested in the music from before that, the stuff that you erased from existence.
Yeah.
Did you do that because it was a very different style and it's something you decided you just weren't into anymore? And because sometimes it's nice. I mean, I look back as well at what I put out and I don't regret things, but I look back and think it's not going to look right next to this. But if I deleted it, something from like my journey is going to go missing, and I sometimes put a lot of meaning in that. But I don't know how you feel about losing it.
I recently listened back to one of the tracks that I took down, and actually I sort of fell in love with it again. But I just feel like I've honed in on kind of what I want to say and my message, and it didn't really fully align. I just felt that I loved the track. The first song was a track called Kiss Chase, which is now, you can now hear the new version of it. And I loved it, but it wasn't quite there for me. I just felt like it wasn't sort of finished. And I think when I first started releasing, as an emerging artist, I think often you find that there's a pressure to just have something out there so you can so you can say that you've got something that people can listen to. And I think I rushed that process. So it wasn't that I didn't love the track, it was just it just wasn't quite ready. I think it was just a bit premature. Sometimes I think, oh, maybe I would re-release it and put the OG version back out. But I'm less sentimental about things like that. I think I'm too much of a perfectionist. So if I get something in my head that I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel right, or I'm not completely happy with that, that's more of the thing that I struggle with, as opposed to struggling with sort of losing a bit of I guess the history of my writing. But I've still got it. Maybe one day I'll put it back out.
It'll be like Kitty Montague, The Archives.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
A 3-hour album.
I like that.
Nice reflection.
3 hours a bit ambitious.
Well, you never know. You never know. So beyond Yellow Lines being the fresh starting point, you then started releasing a lot more. So you've got a lot of singles out.
Yes.
So would you call Yellow Lines like the pivotal moment in your career in terms of your songwriting? Is that where you felt like, this is me now, this is like my artist sound?
Yes, but then everything I released after that was very different. I feel like Yellow Lines was sort of an isolated track that I wanted to get out purely because of the relevance of where we were, and a track that I think was suited to being really raw. But after I released Yellow Lines, I can't remember what I released next. I think it might have been Bad Boy, and then Kiss Chase. These are the tracks that are kind of, I was like, this is the direction that I want to go with. But having said that, I really don't want to. I've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline that is also quite different, and I try not to limit myself too much and put too much pressure on myself. But I've definitely spent a lot more time figuring out kind of what I want to do and how I want each track to sound.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because it does have quite a different sound to Bad Boy and Always on My Mind as well.
Yes.
Which you performed for us in the studio. These all kind of evolved your sound from, we're just listening to it as an outsider, like I listened through chronologically, and Yellow Lines, it's like it's in its own world, which actually kind of makes sense because it's like the year of lockdown.
Exactly.
So it represents that year quite nicely, which is amazing. But they all evolve towards I Kissed You Politely, which I feel like is in a different world entirely. And it's the next song that you performed for us, the second song you performed for us in the studio. I want to know more about the lyrics and the sentiment of this one because I feel like it's quite relevant.
Yeah, very relevant, which is sad.
Yeah.
But it is written about the blurred lines that we often see between consent and coercion, and it's effectively written about male violence towards women. And I wrote it about my some of my experiences, as well as experiences that are shared with so many of my friends and family members and women who relate to the Me Too movement in general. And so it was a very personal song, but I felt like had quite an important message that, one, I just wanted to talk about the blurred lines between consent and coercion, and talk about these sort of manipulative experiences that women often find themselves in. But also to have that message behind it that says that you know this isn't normal, and these aren't, because I think so often we're kind of conditioned to feel like we're being dramatic, or this is just standard behaviour. So I kind of wanted to have that message to reassure people that this isn't normal. And obviously for women in those situations, it's not as easy to say like you can say no. It's not always safe or comfortable for women to do that. But I think the song was about saying where you do feel comfortable in a situation where you're being pressured, then you should be able to, like, it's not normal, you should be able to say no, and you should be able to leave if you can, effectively.
Yeah, it is very relevant, and like you say, it's a sad thing that it's relevant, but it's important that these things come out.
Yeah, because even if you don't align with the message, that it starts a conversation. And
absolutely. Is this something you've always been passionate about, or is this a recent, in the last few years with the Me Too movement things?
It's something that I've definitely always been passionate about. I think as I keep talking about like honing in on my message, and I think this is a huge part of it, like the message of empowerment and feminism, which I wanted to like hone in on my writing, which is something that within the last sort of 5 or 6 years I've slowly sort of aligned with more and more and more. And I think previously when I was talking about wanting people to relate to my music, I didn't fully believe that. I didn't fully know what I wanted people to connect with. I didn't feel like I had anything that relevant to connect with. And now I just feel like I've really found what I want to talk about and what I feel really strongly about and what I would happily sort of kind of advocate for. And
it's an important thing to find. Are there any artists out there who inspired you to do this kind of thing, to stand up for women's rights and feminism, and anyone specifically that you saw and thought, like, I really want to do that, what she's doing?
There's actually, it was actually a lot of kind of authors and poets. So Rupi Kaur, Chidera Egaru, they are incredible like activists and writers. But also you hear songs like Lizzo, for example, and I love the fact that when you hear her music, it instantly like changes your mood. I remember driving with my friend in a car and having, I think, a weird breakup situation. And I just remember getting out of the car after like listening to a bit of Lizzo on full, completely changed my mood. And I was like, this is what connecting to people is like, and how you can really change people's moods, I guess, with music and have an impact. And I think artists like that really made me realize like the impact that you can have.
I used to care how your tongue runs free with my name on the back seat. Stripped off my privacy, you ripped off the sheets I sleep beneath, and I analyze, vandalize the memories that shot it in my mind. I'm rewind, conscious of what you see. Got to stay in line with the eyes judging me. You've been running round, running your mouth, talking loud. If I amount to your love, and I wish I knew then what I know now. Wish I knew how I could have chosen myself, forgotten everyone else. When I kissed you politely, I kissed you politely. I wish I knew then what I know now. When I kissed you politely, I kissed you politely. I kissed you politely. I wish I knew then what I know now. When I kissed you politely. Throw away your pennies, your 2 cents on all of my history, but you don't let me off the leash, still trying to play for keeps. Do you crave the control of me? You sabotage my ego if I try to leave you. Say you'll find another girl to renew all of your fantasies, while I'm trapped behind the bars of your strategies. You've been running round your mouth, talking loud. If I amount to your love, and I wish I knew then what I know now. Wish I knew how I could have chosen myself, forgotten everyone else. When I kissed you politely, I kissed you politely. I wish I knew then what I know now. When I kissed you politely, I kissed you politely. I kissed you politely. I wish I knew then what I know now. When I kissed you politely. save a fragile ego, fake it for the late show. Never taught her how to say no, to put herself before Romeo. And you'll find a way to discredit her name, claim and ingrain that she's part of the blame. Catch 22, it's still under review, chained to a label you don't get to choose. And I kissed you politely, I kissed you politely. I wish I knew then what I know now. And I kissed you politely, I kissed you politely, I kissed you politely. I wish I knew then what I know now. And I kissed you politely.
The Alpha Sessions.
I just want to go back to this poetry thing because I didn't see that coming.
Yes.
And that's really interesting. Do you think like the way you songwrite is inspired by poetry more than music you hear, more than artists? Or do you think it's like a collaborative effort between poetry, literature, people like Lizzo, where you just have like the sentiment and the feeling and the ideas?
Definitely a mixture. I love words, I love lyrics. So that's what I focus in on.
Yeah.
I definitely read a lot of feminist literature, so that kind of all ties into it, and it's definitely where I find a lot of inspiration. I did go through a small, I wouldn't call it phase because I loved it, but of writing and releasing bits of poetry that I'd written. Because I guess it's more free fall. You don't have to fit into a structure of verse, chorus. So I was really enjoying that for a bit, but I then found that I was being more inspired to write songs again. So it definitely all ties in together for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting angle to come from. So the lyrics always come first, but you're a pianist as well, as we've seen from your sessions.
On a good day.
I wouldn't say, that's an understatement. But is that something you've done for a long time as well? Did that come from the musical theatre, the piano?
The piano, I don't even think I can claim that I'm a very good pianist, but I always taught myself, and it's only as I've been playing more and more and started playing for myself as opposed to having a band with me all the time, came a bit more self-sufficient that I have, I think, got better at piano, or definitely more confident. So when I write, I do, it's usually both of them together, the lyrics and the keys, but definitely stronger on the old voice, I think.
Well, you've got an amazing voice, by the way. It's really, really lovely. And it's quite exposed in Yellow Lines, the one you played earlier for us. But the final song you played is Always on My Mind.
Yes.
Which today was a piano version.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But the recorded version that anyone can listen to on Spotify and everywhere is more produced. There's more going on in there.
Yeah.
Is that something you're interested in as well, or do you have people you work with in terms of production?
People that I work with in terms of production, yes, definitely can't claim that one. I would love to say that I could, but I don't have the patience at all. So I've worked with some really great producers. I worked with Jack Gawley on actually most of the songs that I've released. I think Bad Boy, I Kissed You Politely, and Always on My Mind. So Always on My Mind was slightly different. And then Kiss Chase, I work with an amazing producer called Katie Ray, who I'm currently working on a little something with now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there are a couple of guys who called Noah and Alex, who I'm also working with. Their company is called Groove Machine. Check them out. Very, very cool. So it's all of them. It's not me at all. Can't claim that. Yeah.
Amazing.
I just show up and sing a few things.
I'm sure you do more than that. I mean, you write the songs for one thing.
Take the songs.
But I want to talk more about Always on My Mind, about the sentiment of that, when you wrote this one, because this was another release from 2020.
Yeah.
Right. So was this another lockdown write after Yellow Lines?
All of the other tracks actually are songs that I wrote much earlier. This song was about one of my first relationships that was a very turbulent on-off relationship with someone much older than me when I was 18 for quite a long period of time. but again, very on and off, very turbulent. And I wrote it about that and how it was that one person who's essentially that comfort blanket that you keep falling back into a relationship with. And it's not because it's a great relationship, and it's definitely not because they're great. It's just because it's that comfort blanket, and it's easy, and that kind of confusion of having that as your sort of first person, and the confusion of knowing whether it's them that you are infatuated by, that you love, or whether you're just lonely and holding on to that comfort.
And this was a few years ago then. So what was the reason for it coming out just in the last year? Was that a production thing, or you just weren't ready at the time, or did it develop over this time? Did it change in some form?
I think it was a definitely one a production thing. I just had it in the bank and just hadn't done that much with it. And I also wasn't sure with Kiss Chase, and I think with Bad Boy, I knew that I wanted them to have that sort of Lizzo upbeat pop feel to them. With this song, I wasn't 100% sure what direction I wanted to go with. I definitely wanted it to be slightly more raw. But also, I actually didn't write it whilst I was sort of going through this turbulent relationship, but this person kept popping up over the years, so I kind of wrote it about that, of how it was always ended up us sort of being drawn, not back together at all, but to drawn back to each other effectively. So I actually think it took quite a few years to finish. I think I just kept adding chunks to it, and then slowly, I reckon it wasn't until 2017 or 2018 that I actually finished it. But I've had it in the bank for quite a long time.
Yeah, and then lockdown was just a good opportunity, I suppose, since you released Yellow Lines and you get the ball rolling.
Yes, exactly.
But did you get to perform any of these when they came out? Because everyone was obviously stuck at home, and I know you did live streams. So did you do any release parties or gigs?
I've been performing them before actually I even released. I've been performing them for ages before I released any of them. Did I do any release parties? I don't think I did. I think I did a couple of live streams that tied in, but I didn't get the chance to do anything that wild. So it'll be nice coming out of lockdown to maybe for the next releases to get something a bit more exciting planned.
Absolutely.
To get in a room with everyone.
In terms of gigging, so I know you've got one coming up.
Yes, got one on the 15th of November, and I also have a headline which is in March.
Amazing. So in March,
got a while for that one. Yes,
is that in London? A London show?
That will be in London. Yes. Oh gosh, I should know where this one's going to be. It will definitely be on my website.
Okay, so yet to be released, but it will be amazing to see you perform, because you're quite a regular gigger. I know you do a lot of little things, you covers and slots like that. And did you support somebody quite famous at some point?
my claim that I'm still clinging on to. Before we went into lockdown, I supported Gabrielle Aplin, which was in January.
That's amazing.
Literally 2 months before we went to lockdown. So there was me thinking, this is it. I've made it. And then we went into lockdown, and now that's all been forgotten.
That's crazy. I would hang on to that for the rest of my life.
I know. Wear it as a medal. Well, I'm still milking it a bit. 2 years 2 years allowance on that one.
Would you say, is she quite an influence for you?
She was. It was such a full circle moment, because when I first started writing, she was one of the, I think for so many songwriters, she was such a big name as a songwriter, that was a huge influence when I was younger, and maybe even made me fall in love with songwriting, along with a couple of other artists. But she was definitely a huge name, and I definitely got very emotional to a lot of her songs, and when I was younger. So it was a huge full circle moment. It was amazing. It was great, and it was such a beautiful venue. And I was so lucky that so many of her fans, I guess we've got a similar style of music. A lot of our stuff is piano ballads. So I was really fortunate that a lot of her fans, came along and decided to follow on with my journey as well. Who have also persevered throughout the lockdown. So grateful to all of them. And they're still there. They're still here. But yeah, no, it was amazing. It was an amazing gig. Everything just fell into place. And you would think for a gig like that, I would have thought anyway that I would have got so nervous and messed it all up. But no, it was so good. All my jokes landed. That's the main thing.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I was going to say, actually, because I know you supported her, but that final song, Always on My Mind, it made me, because I was sitting there watching it, and it made me feel that kind of way. And I was thinking it has that same kind of feeling to it. But yeah, there's a lot of feeling in that one.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's really lovely.
A lot of raw emotion in that one.
A lot of raw emotion.
Yeah.
It's what we like.
We won't tell him, though. We won't give him the ego boost.
Absolutely not. Well, it's been amazing to talk to you.
Yes, and you. Thank you guys so much for having me.
And I'm sure there's a lot of exciting things coming up in the future. And where can we find you in terms of socials? Shout out to anybody.
Yes, in terms of socials, I am either at Kitty Montague or at Kitty Montague Music on Instagram for sure. Or you can just find me at my website, which is kittymontague.com, and I'll be there. I'm on Apple Music, Spotify, all the good ones. Yeah,
amazing.
So,
well, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Maybe it's your arms that my mind wanders back to. Maybe it's your arms around my body, 'cause I know how much you love my body. Maybe it's the dark, I never liked the dark, but your arms pulling me in, sharing our sins. It leads me back to us, turning the lights off, 'cause there's something in easy that's given me safety. There's something in you that's still got a hold on me. Don't know if I love you, don't know if I'm lonely, just know that I want you to hold me. Don't know if you're mine, don't know if it's time to cut all the ties away from you. Is it the comfort we crave in our silence? Despite all the odds, we prove timeless. Just being with you fills the quiet. No versions of us being heightened, and I know you'll never give up on me. But I use that to the nth degree, to validate, to compensate for the days that I don't feel like me. Subdued you to the glue which I've attached. The strings are pulling out. I know that it's not fair on you to tighten, then undo, but there's something in easy that's given me safety. There's something in you that's still got a hold on me. Don't know if I love you, don't know if I'm lonely, just know that I want you to hold me. Don't know if you're mine, don't know if it's time to cut all the ties away from you. 'Cause you're on my mind all the time. You're always on my mind. You're always on my mind. You're always on my mind. make up my mind again. You've been on my mind again. You've been on my mind. Playing with your mind again. Can't make up my mind again. You've been on my mind again. You're always on my mind.